Every generation in the West always says that they are different. They always say that they've changed, that they're not like their forefathers. But they do all the same things all over again every time. There's no change. They've never changed. Maybe you're a Westerner now, and you're horrified by the things that your society did in the past. But you're doing the same things now and it doesn't horrify you. You know, you can see all those old pictures of people having picnics with their families in the American South, having sandwiches under the swinging bodies of black people who they just lynched. Maybe you see those pictures, this generation, you see those pictures and you're bewildered at how human beings could be so brutal. But right now, tonight, you're sitting in front of the television watching CNN and eating pizza, watching a genocide take place in Gaza. But you're no better than the generations before you. You're just the same. And your great-grandchildren are going to look back on your support for Israel just the same way that you look back on pictures of lynchings and those postcards of black babies being eaten by alligators in front of tourists.
Trump's so-called gold card program, visa program. You've heard about this? He's offering residency and a path to citizenship for $5 million. This is not an immigration policy, it's a fire sale. Citizenship is just another product on the shelf. I mean, why not tweak that program? Allow Americans to sell their citizenship for $5 million. Now that makes sense. Let struggling Americans get paid and move out of that country with their newfound millions. That's a program I could get behind. Imagine if, for instance, just say 10% of African Americans could sell their citizenship for $5 million each. That's roughly 5 million new millionaires, $25 trillion between them. You can get a Dominican citizenship for an investment of just $100,000. You could make the Dominican Republic $25 trillion richer overnight. You know, I'm just saying African Americans because they have the most obvious reasons for being interested in selling their citizenship, since they don't get much out of it in the first place. But if you offered a program like that in reality, well, I think that you'd see that country empty out. I mean, ask yourself, if you're an American, what would you rather have? American citizenship or $5 million? $5 million and the opportunity to get citizenship elsewhere and have all the safety and all the security that comes with being that rich. Retaining your citizenship is never going to secure for you that kind of wealth. It's never going to secure that kind of wealth for you. It's never going to give you that kind of freedom, and it's never going to give you that kind of security. And I think you know it. I think you ought to demand the right to sell your citizenship, since he's already treating it like a product, like an asset that can be bought and sold. So why can't the people who already possess that asset, who already have that product, why can't they sell it? Isn't that capitalism? Isn't that the free market? Forget about selling it. If American citizenship is worth $5 million, well, shouldn't we be entitled to a refund? I mean, I don't know about you, but I sure never got $5 million worth of value from my citizenship. Did you? Well, I think the government ought to buy it back, just like corporations, you know, with their share buybacks and so on. You can have it. Give me that $5 million and we'll be on our way. Who wouldn't go for that deal? Well, you'd see that whole country depopulated within days.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. My name is Dash Lifestyle. Kindly for watching me for the first time, remember to subscribe, like, share, and also comment. So guys, in today's video, I want us to watch and to listen to this great video from Shahid Bolsen. He has come out and tell American people what to do when things are not working in United States, because right now we are seeing there is a high cost of living, and also people that are losing their jobs, and those people who they voted for Donald Trump, they are now regretting to why they voted for Donald Trump. So kindly guys, watch this video till the end, then I'll be back with more comment.
You know, of all the people in the world, the poor and the oppressed can least afford to be emotional or ideological, but they tend to be the most emotional and the most ideological. And I think this is probably symptomatic of feeling powerless, in my opinion. And I think at least partially this feeling of powerlessness stems from ignorance about the systems of power that oppress them. They don't understand how the system works. It's opaque, it's confusing, you know, it's complicated, and seemingly impossible to actually dissect or dismantle. So people fall into this simplistic emotional responses, ideological responses. But the truth is that of all the people in the world, the poor and the oppressed most need objectivity. They most need critical thinking, strategic thinking, realism, and so on. So for example, everyone likes to say that they're ready to die for this or that cause. The price of freedom is death, and so on. All of these very dramatic statements. I'm willing to sacrifice my life for freedom, sacrifice my life for justice, or what have you, for Palestine, whatever the case may be. Okay, great. Fantastic. You're a brave man. I got it. Well, first of all, your willingness to die is completely matched with the power structure's willingness to kill you. So you're in agreement with power. You're in agreement with the power structure about that. Your life can be snuffed out. You feel that way and they feel that way. But secondly, I'm not sure that your death is actually the missing ingredient for the collective liberation of the oppressed. I don't think that you being alive is the thing that has been holding us back from success all this time. And that therefore, getting you out of the picture is going to solve our problems. You getting killed by the power structure isn't the missing piece of the puzzle. I don't really need to know that you're willing to die. What we need to know is whether or not your commitment is great enough, actually, for you to be willing to do long-term work. Tedious, frustrating, exasperating, disappointing, anticlimactic, boring work over the course of decades to achieve actual, incremental, gradual progress, because that's what we really need. And very, very few people are willing to do that. That's the reality. So, okay, you're willing to die, in a big dramatic fashion, but I'm afraid that doesn't really help us. I mean, imagine it like we're talking about a business endeavor. You're interviewing potential new hires, and someone tells you that they're ready to die for the company. Okay, how is that useful? What am I supposed to do with that? See, I'm not really trying to be funny, but I think you're misunderstanding the role that it plays in a movement to be willing to die for that movement. It's supposed to mean that you're willing to do the hard day-to-day work of organizing, researching, educating, persisting in support of your goals. Even if as a result of that work, maybe you get taken out, which ideally you won't be taken out. I mean, more useful than saying that you're willing to die for this or that cause is to say that you're willing to volunteer hours of your time. Are you willing to spend from your own money in support of a cause? Are you willing to be publicly maligned and slandered and to have people hate you and to tell lies about you? Are you willing to be uncomfortable? Are you willing to repeat the same things, the same messages over and over and over again until your brain goes numb? Are you willing to be completely ignored? And like I said, are you willing to put in months, if not years upon years of work without seeing any massive, meaningful changes? Are you willing to take one step forward and be pushed 50 steps back? Because these are all the things that are going to make you much more valuable to any movement than your supposed willingness to take a bullet. The truth is that bullet probably will never come, because the only people who get those bullets are actually the ones who are willing to do all of these other things that I mentioned, who are actually doing them. So, I mean, when you declare your willingness to die, it makes me wonder if you should just get help, because you might actually just be suicidal. I mean, look, sure, okay, maybe working against systems of injustice might get you killed at some point, maybe. But this is understood going in. It doesn't need a lot of talk about it. It's just understood. This is the minimum, not the maximum requirement. Like, we assume that you're ready for that from the outstart. But some of you talk like getting killed for your cause is the actual goal, which is messed up. There's a lot of strange notions, actually, that sort of confuse people when it comes to activism or opposition or resistance or what have you, in my opinion. A lot of confusion about this. I don't see the point of all the melodrama. It's self-aggrandizing, in my opinion, in a way. And it reflects an overall lack of realism or practicality when it comes to serious efforts. I mean, there are several preliminary stages that you should actually go through before you make the decision to get involved in any sort of activism or opposition or whatever the case may be, protest and so on. There are stages of, say, self-reflection, self-examination. Like, why do you feel driven to protest, to become an activist, to be in opposition? What's motivating you? And you have to be honest about that. You have to be objective about that. You have to be real about that. Is it pure emotion that's driving you? Is it guilt? Is it reasons related to your own self-image? Or is it just boredom? Is it avoidance of some sort of personal issues in your life? All of these things need to be questioned. because they're all bad reasons. And there are very often major factors, actually, that spur people to become involved in protests and resistance movements and what have you. And then you have to honestly evaluate to what extent is this or that issue that you're concerned about, to what extent is it any of your business? By that I mean, is it an issue over which you have some authority? Is it an issue which you have the capability to have an impact? Do you even fully understand the issue? Are you educated about the issue? Or are you just reacting without understanding the issue because it struck you emotionally? Is this an issue about which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to question you? Question whether you did anything about it or not. Because you understand that you're not going to be questioned about any issue that's not under your authority or any issue that is beyond your capacity to do something about it. You're not going to be questioned about that. You're not held accountable for that. See, I think that the very high level of popular politicization is a new phenomenon in the world, and it's very Western. This idea that everyone is supposed to have a say in everything that happens everywhere. You know, historically, especially in the Muslim world, and in most traditional societies, most people understood that governance was the business of the government and not the general public. But this so-called democratic notion infected a lot of people with the idea that governance is actually the business of the citizenry. No matter how ignorant they may be, no matter how emotional or unqualified or uninformed they may be, they're still supposed to have a say. And then you have people on one side of the world thinking that they're supposed to have a say in what happens on the other side of the world, because everyone's supposed to have a say about everything. And it all just gets ridiculous at that point. Like, you can be concerned about what your government is doing on the other side of the world, sure, because that's your government. You know, or what your companies are doing on the other side of the world. You can be concerned about that because those are your companies, meaning they are from your country. They're your country's companies. But what the government of this or that country is doing with regards to their own people, that's not within your purview. That's none of your business. And okay, even with regards to your own government, or say your own power structure, which includes the private sector power within your country. Again, you have to make this assessment. Why are you involving yourself? Should you involve yourself? Are you qualified to become involved? Are you informed enough? And do you have the capacity to influence the situation in any way? You have to examine all of this, in my opinion, before you ever make a decision to become an activist or to become involved, you know, even when it regards your own society. And say that you determine that you want to involve yourself for the right reasons. You know, you've made an assessment. You are educated about the issue that you're concerned with. You are informed and so on. But your assessment also determines that you have a very limited capacity to actually change anything. Well, then, of course, what you're supposed to do is try to build your capacity. Because if your concerns surpass your capacity, first of all, you're not going to be asked about it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's enough for you in that case to just oppose this or that injustice in your heart. Because realistically, you don't have the power to change it with your actions or with your speech. And secondly, if this is the case, your actions and your speech will be futile at best, even if you become active. And at worst, they'll be detrimental. So you need to build your capacity to where you can realistically be effective in some way. Otherwise, you're not only not helping, you're probably hurting the situation. Okay, so then, when you have decided that you want to be an activist, or you want to be involved in some sort of movement for social change, or whatever the case may be, well, then you have to determine precisely what course of action is going to be useful. Which means that then you have to examine, and you have to analyze, and you have to map out the power dynamics, the power structure in your society. Because if you've decided to be an activist, it doesn't mean that you automatically go out and protest in the street or start calling for revolution or marching or what have you. You don't automatically do that. You can't just jump to that. I mean, you don't know actually if any of these things, if any of these, you know, items on the generic activist menu are even effective in your society. I mean, to be honest, it's questionable to what extent these tactics are actually effective in any society. But even if they are effective in some societies, in some cases, regarding some issues, it does not mean that they are universally applicable and that they will necessarily work in your society. In this case, for this issue, you can't just make these kinds of assumptions. That's irresponsible. I mean, I had someone ask me on Twitter the other day, if most protest movements in the global south are infiltrated by Western intelligence for the purpose of destabilization, so then if that's the case, what can people in those countries do when they oppose the government on this or that policy? You know, the question is, should they just abandon the whole idea of protest? Okay, well, first of all, you should definitely abandon the idea of protest if you have just jumped to that idea without any deliberation. You should never decide on your strategy. You should never decide on your tactics without careful analysis first. But yes, when you see a protest movement bursting out on the streets in the global south without there being any strategic planning beforehand, it's almost already a given that this has been infiltrated, that it's an infiltrated movement, and that it will be dealt with by the authorities as such, meaning it will be severely cracked down upon because the authorities will assume that you're nothing but Western provocateurs trying to stir up unrest. Look, the Western model of street protests and so on, it's highly dubious the extent to which these are even effective in the West, much less in global south countries, much less in Muslim countries. I mean, you can make the argument that these types of protests in America or, you know, Europe or what have you, elsewhere in the West, that these types of protests are encouraged because they just let the people burn off steam. And they make them feel like they're doing something consequential, precisely to prevent them from actually doing something consequential. So no, you should never just jump straight into organized mayhem of street protests. That's a big mistake. You have to look at the power structure and the power dynamics of your society, your specific society, and locate and identify potential avenues for redress because they may exist already. You just have to learn what they are. Like I've said many, many times, you have to identify the ahl al-hal wal-aqd of your society, the people of influence, the people of power, the movers and shakers, the decision makers. And then you have to see how they can potentially be influenced, how you can potentially influence the influencers. Or again, you can try to become from among the influencers, from among that segment of the society, that segment of the people who have influence. So I'm not a fan of spontaneous, spur of the moment outburst style activism. Now that doesn't mean be acquiescent. It doesn't mean be compliant. It doesn't mean never rock the boat and so on. That's not what I'm saying. I have no problem whatsoever with confrontation when it is called for. But if confrontation is called for, then it is even more important to be strategic and to be methodical and to objectively assess the real existing power dynamics at play. And again, I'm not anti-street protests per se, but understand what it really does and what it really does not accomplish. You understand? Have an accurate assessment of what role it plays in a movement. The same goes for boycotts and so on. Any sort of mass activism. You have to understand accurately what you're doing and don't have an unrealistic expectation of what you're doing or an expectation of what you're going to achieve, what your action will achieve. Like, for example, the Montgomery bus boycott back in the 1950s for the racial integration of city buses in Montgomery, Alabama. African Americans stayed off of the buses for over a year to protest or to press for integration. This is the famous case with Rosa Parks and how Martin Luther King became a national figure in the civil rights movement. It was the Montgomery bus boycott. But the fact of the matter is that the integration of the city buses in Montgomery, Alabama was ultimately determined through the Supreme Court case, in a case that was brought by the NAACP and argued by Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall famously said that he saw no reason why all those people in Montgomery had to walk for all those months, because the outcome was ultimately by means of the legal case, not the boycott. I mean, this isn't entirely true because the boycott did add pressure to the Supreme Court. It did create an environment of pressure. It galvanized opinion in support of integration and so on. It had a role, but it did not cause the outcome. This is generally going to be the case with protests and marches and rallies and so on. They establish a sort of mood of the society. They establish the mood of the market. And that can influence decision making. But they don't actually cause the results. They have a degree of influence, but they're not necessarily decisive. And again, they have to be undertaken only after there's a full evaluation, a strategic evaluation of their potential impact. You see, activism isn't really about big dramatic action. It's methodical, it's tedious, it's boring, and it's tiring. You know, it's like how people watch police shows, TV, police dramas, and in the movies and so on. They think that the police are always in shootouts, chasing down criminals on the street and whatnot, high-speed chases. But in actuality, for real police officers, at least half of their time is spent doing paperwork. Cops are nothing but bureaucrats with guns. It's the same with activists, real activists. The greatest proportion of their time is spent in mundane tasks. Filing papers, getting signatures, holding meetings, making appointments, you know, pushing an initiative inch by inch, day after day. And sporadically, there may be a moment of excitement or drama when they organize an event, you know, or a rally or something like this. But most of the time, they're just doing drudgery. I mean, I've said it before, if you're going to become involved in political protest or political opposition or what have you, okay, that means that you are now involving yourself in politics. That means that you have to understand politics. You have to understand the politics of your society, the politics of your community, and so on. Meaning, you have to understand the relationships between people. That's what politics is. The relationships between the people of influence, the relationship between different interests, etc., etc. And you have to figure out how to navigate all of that, how to manipulate all of that, how to make compromises, how to make deals, and you have to follow protocols and so on. So if you're not willing to do all of that, quite frankly, your activism or your reflex to become an activist is very shallow, and it's probably emotional, and you're probably just looking for something to do. Which is why most protesters, let's be honest, most protesters come from the bourgeois, the middle class, and so on. People with disposable time income and general privilege, and generally lead boring, uneventful lives. You know, some people go to raves and others go to protests. It's a recreational activity, which is also why it's largely a Western phenomenon, and why you will mostly see that the people in the global South who participate in these kinds of things also tend to be westernized people. But I'll say it again, not everyone needs to be an activist. Not everyone needs to be political. Not everyone needs to validate or justify their existence by participating in a social cause or by taking a stand or what have you. It's literally not for everyone. You know, we all know the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, telling us that you're supposed to change evil by your hand if you can, or by speaking against it if you can, or at least hating it in your heart if you can't do either of those. So if you're in the last category, again, what you have to try to do now is to try to build your capacity. And that can mean also just building a workable strategy through which you can amplify your capacity. So that then you're in a position where speaking against an evil can have an impact because you built your capacity. And then you can build more to where you actually have the capacity to change it by means of effective action. But if you can't do either of those things, building your capacity and so on, then you should probably just accept that you're not cut out for this kind of thing, and that's fine. And just settle upon providing moral support for those who are cut out for this kind of thing. But no, caring is not enough to qualify you for political activism and opposition and so forth. And being ready to die for a cause is not nearly as important as being ready to live for a cause.
So guys, I hope you have watched and listened to that video from Shahid Bolsen. I really love Shahid Bolsen because he is that one of our American activists, whereby he usually fight for the rights of the black people. Not only the black people, also he usually fights and protect some of the African continent and black countries. So Shahid Bolsen coming out and tell Americans what to do when things are not working. Right now we are seeing in America people, they are losing their jobs. We have seen Donald Trump coming out and saying about called citizenship, whereby a majority of Americans right now, they are thinking of selling their citizenship. And if America, it will continue to be as it is, so many people, they will be going to consider selling out their citizenship, because right now America, I keep on telling you that America, it is that country whereby it is for the rich people. The rich in America, they are enjoying. The rich people, America, it is that country which makes the rich people be the rich. You can see the mistake that the white people, they did in America. They voted in for the billionaires. Right now, America, it is being the leaders, they are billionaire. Donald Trump, you can see Elon Musk. We saw a lot of billionaires when Donald Trump, he was being given powers when he was being sworn in as a president of United States. So this is tell you that right now America, it is for the billionaires. So these people, they are making life very difficult for the local people. You have seen the high cost of living. We have seen some of the Americans right now, they cannot even afford basic necessity. So this is tell you that America right now, it is that country whereby it continues to make the rich people more richer and poor people to become more poor, so they cannot be able even to afford some of the things that previously they were affording. So because of that, we have seen majority of American complaining life, it has become very difficult. They cannot even pay hospital bills, and also we have seen majority of people, undocumented immigrants, that are being deported back to their country. So because of that also, it has made America to be that country whereby people, they are considering selling their citizenship. So if it has reached to that point, you just know America, it is going to fall down. So kindly guys, let's talk more on the comment section, and also you can give me your thought of what Shahid Bolsen, he has come out and say. So let's talk more on the comment section, then I'll be back with more videos. So subscribe if you haven't, like this video, share, and also comment. See you in my next one. Bye bye.